Welcome everyone to this last meeting of the year for the Cromwell Community Board. Probably happy the first item is the apologies. Anna called me last night with an apology, so that's why I'm in the seat to that. And then we've also got an apology for Buck. So with those two apologies, if we can have a mover, thank you Nigel. Seconder, thank you Bob. All those in favour? Aye. Carried. Thank you. And then we can move on to the next item on our agenda, page number 5, which is a public forum, and we've got Janine and Ali here to talk to us today. They're on Teams. Thank you, Ali. I'll leave it to you.
Thanks, Verna. So my name's Ali Valentine. I chair the Cromwell and District Community Trust, and with me today I've got my fellow trustee Janine Wood. We had a meeting last week and we had a workshop because our latest community plan came out this year, and we're looking at various proposals of projects for initiatives that could help realise the visions of our latest community plan. We're therefore requesting that the following project be added to the Council's 2021-22 annual plan. And this project would be to build a replica of Old Chinatown in Old Cromwell. And I'll hand over to Janine to talk about the details.
Okay, we've sort of went through all our action points, and you can see there on our traffic light system, the only red one from the 2013 plan was the Chinatown action point. So that's what raised the discussion. Post the meeting, I went and made the discussion with Terry Emmett, who was heavily involved with it back in the 2010s when I was on the promotions group, and he put together quite a lot of plans and history and records, and I think it got to the stage of actually starting off the consenting process. So he still has all that information, and then he directed me back to Helen Scholes, as you know, who is the chair of Old Cromwell Inc. When I spoke to Helen, she'd just been reading their information, and apparently in 1992 it was in their minutes or their records there about the Old Cromwell project, which was basically in that land below the Vic. There's a pathway that's on an angle down to where the cycle track is now, and that was intended to just replicate the sorts of the tracks and maybe create one of the buildings there. And I guess our concerns were that we wanted to understand the footprint of the Hall and Culture Centre project to see how far that extended, and to make sure that this opportunity wasn't lost, that there was still potential to do that and have that linkage between Old Cromwell and the new Heritage Cultural Centre with this element of the recognition of the Chinatown. We know a few years ago there was talk about the Cromwell Mining Centre, and that reference there was because they have some sort of recreated buildings, but they were recreated back, I think it was in the 70s or the 80s for a film. So they're not authentic or anything like that. So there's the opportunity to have that linkage between the two places. It's not like where we would be taking over from that idea. So it's a matter of tabling that concept in front of the community board and see what your thoughts are on it.
Does anyone have any questions, thoughts, memories from back in 1990?
2010 was the last one, promotions group.
Janine, you don't have to remember why it didn't go further from when they started the consenting, because I can't. There was some reason that I think that made it not progress. Was it to do with the Chinese connection? Was there some issue there to be worked through, or I can't remember?
I don't recall that element of it. All I've heard was consenting stopped, and I don't know whether it was within the council thing. I know there were some people that off the top of my head, remember that they wanted to be able to pull their boats into the shore on that side because it was sheltered from nor'westers. But of course now with the silting, that's no longer the same issue with that whole area there.
So was that whole plan set, Janine, that Terry had?
I haven't seen it since those days, so he's already done that work, but I just wanted to make sure we could get it in under your radar before Christmas, before the end of this year. We'll have to work together and get a team to do it. I will have to revisit what was in place, but both Helen and Terry are prepared to work on the project as well.
Oh, so that's the buy-in from Old Cromwell.
Yes.
Yeah.
That was after their meeting last Thursday night.
So, anything else that anyone wanted to know? Sure. No? You're good. Thank you very much. You'll have that. And thanks for your time coming to the public forum.
Told you it'd only be 5 minutes.
Okay. Thanks for your time, and we really hope that you consider putting this thing in the annual plan, because as I know, you can always take something out of the annual plan, but if it's not in, it's not in, and we don't want to see, any more time lost. We think it's quite timely while the work's being done of the cultural and community centre. I think that this would only enhance that area and also be good tourism opportunity as well. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Okay.
Then we just got, so we have yeah. No, I was just going to do the normal question. Bit of admin first. Sorry. A wee bit of admin first. We just got to confirm the minutes, that was all. So that's on page number 7. Item number 3. It's just a confirmation of the previous minutes. If I can have a mover for that, unless there's anything to add, or queries or questions, should we have to move that? Neil, happy to second that?
Yeah.
All in favour?
Aye.
All against? Thank you. And the next one, I just need to remind you, item 21.9.1, page 15, is the declaration of interest. It's just a reminder for us all to be vigilant and to stand aside from any decisions if there's a conflict in today's meeting. Thank you. And then move on to page 18. And that's just the report from the Cromwell Museum.
That's right, and I won't spend too much time talking, so I'll just leave it over to Jennifer and Martin. This is just their annual report back on the funding that they get from you all, which is through a memorandum of understanding. So through the long-term plan, it was agreed to up that funding from 35,000 to 40,000 a year. And Jennifer and Martin will have a bit of a chat to you about what they have been up to and take any questions.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Okay to go. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Well, good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for the opportunity to talk to you. We did prepare an annual report for the calendar year 2020, which was sent to you early this year. I'm not sure when, but I'm not sure if you even got a copy of it or recall what was in it. But I thought I'd just pick out a few highlights from that, and then we just want to talk about the year ahead. Certainly it was a difficult year as far as the museum was concerned. With COVID, numbers dropped significantly. The number of visitors last year was just over 4,100 compared with over 10,000 the year before. And our donations were 3,800 compared with almost 10,000 the year before. That's in 2019. And this year has been similar in terms of numbers and donations. But and having said that, it's been a very busy year for the museum, and Jennifer's going to talk about some of the exhibitions that we've had and some of the initiatives that we've undertaken. We were able to keep our winter series going until we got stymied with level 4 lockdown partway through the year. In addition to the funding from the council, which Nikki's mentioned, which goes basically to pay the contract fee for Jennifer, we also raised over $45,000 in external funds, including a Trust Community Foundation of 15,000 and a Te Papa grant, a grant from the Lotteries Commission of $15,000, and we were also got a hardship grant from Museums Aotearoa of $12,500. And this meant we were able to, during last year, to install new mobile shelving out the back for to store our collection, and that was a very successful project. We still utilise 3 storage units in Cromwell self-storage, which is becoming more of a problem for us, A, because of the expense, but also because it's not suitable storage anyway. So we're going to have to look at deaccessioning some of our material at some stage. The museum trustees are still the same group of people. They've met pretty much every month during the last year, and during this year. The trustees have become busier of late because of 3 projects that are on the go. I've been quite heavily involved in the ILM workshops run by Rationale, looking at the strategy for the museum sector in the district. Jennifer is on the external stakeholder group, which has its first meeting in early December, providing advice on the cultural centre and probably the museum as well. And Peter Mead, one of our trustees, is our nominee on the Central Otago Museum Trust, which is still to meet. So you know, we haven't been idle, and we can point to another success with Lotteries grant, another Lotteries grant this year of $20,000, and we have a number of other applications in process. So these grants are essential to enable us to fund new displays and to run some of our programs as well. What else can I say, Jennifer?
A trip to Southland.
Oh yes, yeah. I can just report that as recently as last week, myself and Jennifer and a couple of our trustees made a tour around 4 Southland museums. Well, they weren't 3 Southland and 1 South Otago, visiting Waka, Riverton, Waikaia and Mataura museums, all of which are good examples of relatively modern museums with quite different approaches to displays than what we have here. And we got a lot of very useful material out of that, made some very useful contacts, and we intend to continue visiting museums, you know, over the next year or so, just to gather ideas together. So yeah, that's what we've been doing. And I'll get Jennifer now just to talk about some of the more detail of the of our exhibitions for this year. I see we've got a sign up that says bad network quality. Can you still hear us?
All right.
Yep. Okay. Yep. Okay.
Right. Thank you, Martin, and good afternoon. Thank you for listening to us today. As Martin said, we have faced a few challenges this year with the COVID lockdowns. However, we still press on with our exhibition program, and at the moment we have a live chafer beetle display, and also some extra beetles were delivered to us last week from Ag Research, as the beetles that were deposited in the live display are very shy and they refuse to come out to show themselves. So we do have some extra beetles for school children to handle, and the children are indeed really enjoying learning about the chafer beetles, and we've had quite a few school visits so far this year, with more scheduled in the upcoming few weeks. And at the moment we also have the Otago Museum photographic display, which is always very, very popular with our visitors, and that's scheduled to continue over the Christmas break. And in the new year, I'm just organising for another exhibition by a local landscape artist, and that will probably be launched early January. And as Martin said, I am involved in the external stakeholder group and very much looking forward to contributing to that group and to talk to the team there about the development of the cultural centre and hopefully the new museum as well. And speaking about the potential new museum, our Southland trip was indeed very illuminating, and we are planning for our new museum through reassessing our exhibitions, looking at the kinds of stories that we want to tell in the new museum, and just sort of planning ahead for that so we will be ready for to progress that project. And finally, I've been asked to be involved in a project called to Tonu at the Otago Museum, and I'll be travelling to Dunedin to contribute to that. And that's a project funded by the Ministry of Arts, Culture and Heritage to identify the challenges and opportunities in Otago and Southland museums. So I'm really looking forward to being involved in that and to creating some new networking opportunities.
Do you want to mention the Frankton thing? No,
Oh yes, and I've also been in talks with the Frankton New Cultural Centre there as well, so I'm looking forward to working with them in the future and exchanging ideas and opportunities there. So thank you, that's probably it from us at the moment, Martin.
Well, I'd just like to add one final thing. We do appreciate the support from the Community Board. We appreciate your funding. We try and give value for money. We also appreciate Verna and Anna turning up to our meetings pretty regularly, given their other commitments, and I think that we're a very tight little bunch here. One of the key things I just wanted to emphasise before we finish about the museum sector is the importance of community involvement in designing it. So thought will have to be given to how we can involve the community in the most effective way in any new project. There's still a heavy reliance on volunteers in the sector. And of course, the issue of operational funding is going to be an ongoing issue for the sector as well. So these are all issues that will no doubt be discussed over the coming period of time. So that's all from me as well. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you. So we need to just receive that report. Before we do, was there any discussion, questions, comments that you had? Martin and Jennifer, while you had them here, I've got the opportunity to quiz them every now and again at their meetings, but if there's anything anyone else wanted to know, now's your chance.
I think we're well served by having the connection between you and Anna that makes it a bit easier. So the report that comes from the museum is pretty comprehensive and thorough. So from the groups, I'm really happy that I can say that we're well informed and keep up to speed what's happening about because of that relationship.
We've been waiting. I haven't stolen any thunder. We've been waiting to hear about them. Is there anyone sure? Do you have any comments? Anyone else? Look, Martin, and Jennifer, there certainly is a lot happening in this space. So thank you very much for your hard work. I certainly do know how much time and effort you and the team put into the museum sector. So thank you very much for that. If we can then receive the report, if I've got someone to move that. Nigel, are you happy to do that?
Yeah.
Second, Bob, thank you. And all in favour? Opposed? Carried. Thank you very much. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Bye.
We then move on to the next item on our agenda. It's item on page number 18, item 20.3. No terrace. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, everyone. I take this report as having been read. The purpose of the report is to consider allocating a car park to the Cromwell Youth Trust by Murray Terrace. And I'd just like to point out in the recommendations, in recommendation 2, and that is the wording, the hut should actually be the hut was the previous name, but it is now the hangout. Does anyone have any questions?
Oh, easy one. Well, recommendations are to receive the report and accept the level of significance as recommendation A. Recommendation B, approve the allocation of one car park for the hangout for the purpose of loading and unloading storage of the passenger van on part lot 47 DP 18370 as shown in green on figure 4 at no charge, and authorise the chief executive that's necessary. I just want to know about signage. Was there going to be anything to sort of just designate?
We were going to, I think in here we've noted that we would just change it to a private part of the accessibility.
Can I have a mover for that? Cheryl? Nigel? All those in favour? Any opposed? Carried. Thank you very much. Thank you, Debbie. Don't leave the seat yet though. Yes. The next one, item 21.9.4 on page 79, is the Central Otago Vintage Art Club requesting funding.
Again, I take this report as having been read. The purpose of this report rather is to request funding from the fund account that is held within council for the Central Otago Vintage Car Club to partly seal a portion of their lease area. Does anybody have any questions on that? They do actually have the funding money to do so.
Any questions? That's just one of our standard ones, isn't it? Where
I'm happy to move.
happy to move.
I'll second.
A, B and C. We might be finished early yet. That was easy. Oh, they get easier, didn't Thank you. Okay, item 21.985, road naming. Don't know if you let your way to see.
Afternoon, everybody. So we've had a request to name 2 new roads in the development of Cemetery Road. It's a new subdivision. It is actually an extension of Harvest Road. So you'll see on your appendix that Road 1 is Harvest Road and it's already named. The request is then to name Fitzgerald Drive, Road 2 in green, and Proctor Way, Road 3 yellow on your map. The recommendation is that we accept the proposal. Questions?
I know that Neil might have something to say, but given that Neil taught me everything there is to know about road naming.
No, I didn't teach you. I just told you I had a view of that. That someone taught me when I first joined the community board a wee way back that in Cromwell, as much as we could, we should try and recognize the contribution made by previous members of our community, be it in a civil capacity or as volunteers or whatever. And if you go back in time, most of our previous mayors and others were pretty well volunteers when it comes to the job that they were doing. Also, I'm mindful though that we also have recognised the work done by the developing community. I think it's fair to say that in recent times we've seen that development community change in terms of days gone by. The developers were probably people that generally were part of the community as well. So it made it a little bit easier. So while I respect the developers' connection here with the 2 names that have been popped up, I think that there's an opportunity still to recognise some people of our town. What you have, of course, is when you go into the area and try and find out what's an appropriate name. So if you go to our Cromwell list, which is and it's actually in the next report, but it's still relevant to this, it starts on page 101. And you get the Bannockburn, Northburn, and then terrace names, and then pies are on the next page on 102, and then it goes to Lowburn, and then some names for Cromwell. And the one that sticks out to me there that I think would be appropriate to pick up in this particular area, being the industrial area, which is pretty close to transport, would be the name of McBride. was a clean transport operator in Cromwell in days gone by. So I'm guided by that. Trying to find another name that's probably fitting to that area, and I unfortunately don't have the history that some of the previous board members that I worked with did have in this area, so I'm at a bit of a loss. But I would be in this situation saying that there's an opportunity to recognise the name McBride, and then probably a connection back to the developer through the name Proctor, because there's the day that was the Hay Proctor joint venture that did this development, and I think there's in this particular case. So that's my logic. But of course, there could be some other views.
Was that 2 names or 4?
True.
Plus harvest, right?
Well, harvest already done. Harvest is already done. And I don't really that logically extends the limits. It doesn't need any action by us or whatever. So I guess if I just might as well finish off my ramblings, I'll find the page. I think they had road 3 was going to be Proctor Way.
Mm-hmm.
And road 2 there, Fitzgerald, and I would propose that it be McBride, and that to me looks like a crescent.
Yeah, they have suggested drive, but it certainly is a crescent, so I think it would be suitable if you wanted to. That board, can I just ask somebody that has a computer in front of them to check that we don't have a McBride in our district already? I don't think we do. It doesn't ring any bells.
Bells, how I can probably do it.
Yeah, Mac or Mac.
CB, huh?
Goes up in GS, when I go road to McBride.
Will you check?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes, everybody happy with that? Any extra further comments?
Well, are we just, sorry, so what are we saying? We're going to go with McBride?
And Proctor Way, was it in the end?
Yeah.
McBride Pleasant and Proctor Way.
Yeah, road 2 would be McBride Present, and road 3 is Proctor Way.
Yep.
That's what I recommend. I'd like to move, that's the case.
We're happy to second that?
Yep, absolutely.
All those in favour? Opposed? Carried. Moving on to the next one, so that's item number 21.9.6 on page 97, and that's the road name of Terrace.
So once we have been asked to name one road and one right of way, developer has requested the board to consider 3 pairs of road names, just ensure continuity. So the suggestions are Stone Drive for Road 1, referred to as Link Road in your map, and Mason Lane for the right of way. These names have been selected in memory of Tony Meehan, who's passed away as the developer's father. He was a local bridge builder and stonemason. It is worthy just to note that Stones Road has been used in the Wakiri Valley, but we have had pre-approval from LINZ to use this, to use Stone Drive, simply because they're quite a distance away from each other, 25 kilometres away, and therefore there doesn't seem to be any issues with confusion with emergency services. So our recommendation is that we go with Stone Drive for the road and Mason Lane for the right of way.
Any comments to that?
I think it's
Similar vein?
they might know the question I'm going to ask. Is something changed in LINZ or what? I don't get it. If Stone works between here and there, but Monroe doesn't work between here and Terrace, I'm sorry, I'm confused.
As far as I'm aware, there's nothing changed in LINZ. There may be, I mean, on this particular occasion, I went and specifically asked them you know, can we put this name forward to the community board because it has been used before and this is what their response was. It's possible that we did ask that question with Monroe. I can't remember how long ago it was that we did that, but yeah.
That might be good for me.
I can't say publicly what I really want to think of that. It's not me scratching my head, but I will follow that up separately. I'm quite taken by the story.
Yeah.
I have to admit. And when I look at the list, I go and find I can't, because this actually probably sat in Vincent County, pre-Cromwell Borough. Yeah. So it sits in the Vincent County area, and it's sort of a bit hard to go and look at that list, and we haven't really got Paris got Bannockburn in. And Tony Meehan was a stonemason. It actually makes some sense to me. That's just.
It would be, yeah, both Stone Drive and Mason Lane.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
The story appealed.
Yeah.
Well, happy with that.
I've got to move. Okay. Oh, second. Cheryl. All right. There you go. That was it. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Hey,
Yes.
did you ask Linda about Monroe Lane for me?
Yeah, I can.
Yeah, because I think we're finding out today, well, if we want to call Monroe something else and Cromwell, is there a difference? Because I think the consistency, and maybe it's just we didn't ask for.
Yeah.
But if I only got to ask and they're going to say yes.
It could just be the distance.
Yeah,
It could just be the distance.
William
Yeah.
Cale, from New
I think 25 and here, which is what they obviously measured up on.
Is that by road or is that by?
It might be as the crow flies, I'm not sure.
Yeah, it's without a question, it's separate matter, but
What if it gets a pre-approved?
Yeah.
How would you do that?
yeah, because that Monroe one is another mere, I think we go through the list, and it's one that we've tried before, but
Just wondering how is it spelt out in
Charitable.
yeah, because that might be a bit of another reason not to,
Stone, no,
no.
won't work. I'll really say something about bureaucrats then. Throw the stones.
Thanks very much.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda, item number 21.9.7, page 110. Right, this seems to be the financial. We'll leave that here.
As take the paper is being read, the Cromwell ward has finished the first full phase of operating surplus of $165,000. This is compared with a budgeted surplus of $28,000. The revenue is still an unfavourable variance of $3,000 overall, with the reserve contributions offsetting the internal interest revenue. So the internal interest revenue is driven by the low market interest rates, which is still continuing this year. The expenditure has a favourable variance of 140k, and this is mostly due to the timing of work programs and the need for additional resources. The capital expenditure finishes the quarter with a favourable variance of $280,000 and 2% of the total revised budget being spent. This has been driven mainly by the swimming pool replacement heating system, which is due to arrive in February 2023. Are there any questions?
I just got a simple one, I suppose. From what you've reported, there's no obvious issues going forward with these numbers that should cause us any concern anyway, so it's 3 months in, but I'll look at it, must have got to handle it.
Let me in that capital, trying to get everything out. That's where I was, as you can see, by the revised budget was quite a significant carry forward, and assuming that work gets done this year, then we catch up. And get that work done this year. That's our biggest loss at the moment.
Which was our running here and everything before.
That's correct. We've got the property as we've got the common front reserve, and we've got the quite a bit of things that have changed as part of the revised budget. So the annual training to be revised. There's a couple of things that would carry forward, or just as part of the revision. That should be.
Any other questions? We just need to receive that report. So if there's no further questions, if someone will move that.
Oh,
Neil, Cheryl, second. Thank you very much. Your worship.
I'll keep it that way, Baron.
Oh, thank you very much.
Since we're allowed together, things that have been happening that I've attended in Cromwell, I met the Otago Trustees to lunch at the conference centre. It was a good opportunity to meet the new trustee. Attended Business South Advisory Group meeting at Cromwell last week. That was followed by BA5, which took the form of a seminar, which was a good seminar, but it was a really poor beer after work because there wasn't any. Speaking of business meetings, small business network breakfasts haven't been happening since we're in level 2. It's a real shame. They're always a very good way to catch up with people. Sandy business breakfast taken this approach, Friendly Roxburgh, and the 2 business breakfast groups in Alexandra are still happening. This coming Friday, I'll be joining Cromwell man Matt Edwards as he walks from Balclutha home to Cromwell as part of a fundraiser for November.
you can't walk that far.
I'm only walking from Alex to Clyde. I haven't got time. I could walk that far if I had a month. Right, thank you. He's aiming at walking 4,400 kilometres, including on treadmills, in recognition of the 440 people who took their own lives in New Zealand last year. And the sponsorship of $1 a kilometre to raise funds, and they're targeted specifically through November to Men's Health, and he's got $900 so far. And on the weekend, speaking of walking, I undertook a 4 barrels wine walk with friends, but it turned out to only be a 3 barrels and a 5 stags wine walk because the Scott Byers had a wedding. That was a really good thing to do, and a real attraction to the region, and they were busy. Like every place we went to was just humming along with people going through, and I thought, here we are, second weekend in November, pretty average day, not much going on, no Aucklanders, and it's still just ticking over nicely. That's been the kind of things I've been doing around Cromwell. The rest of my life's been 3 waters domination.
Yeah. And you also had a holiday.
Oh yeah, I did have a week off. Yeah, that's right. You didn't break anything while I was away, so that's good.
Nothing.
You did say you went to the Masonic Lodge 125th dinner.
Did receive your report? Got a mover? Oh, Stigner, Nigel, thank you. Thank you, Worship. We'll then move on to the chair's report. So I guess I'll stand in for Anna for those weeks today. That's item number 21. Keep mine to be brief as well. I'll follow Tim's lead. I don't need to really give you an update of the Museum Trust. As you can see, they're very busily beavering away, and they're very involved with all the other groups and all the changes at the moment, which keeps them busy. But I think they have really positive contributions to make with a lot of experience in this space. And they're excited. It's a different buzz in that room now. It's good. Then just sort of briefly on the Lake Dunstan Charitable Trust. They're looking at teaming up with Wanaka, which also give the ground and getting some runs on the board with a Delta Nature funding. They're also waiting on Linz for some approvals. There's always more approvals from Linz about mowing and Mockley. And there's also tonight a guest speaker out at the Yacht Club. There'll be Burgers Afloat will be out there, and that'll be, they've started a new series called Ripple Afloat, and the first person that will come to speak is Anna Yeoman, and she'll be talking about lizards. So it'll be brief for us. And then Cadet Cromwell, they had on the 30th of the 10th, they had the Repair Cafe, which was a collaborative between Cadet Cromwell and the Alex Wastebusters, and that was really well attended. And my understanding is that most of the items could be repaired instead of being thrown away, so that was good. On the 27th of the 11th, so this is coming weekend, the crop swap is back on from Heritage Precinct. And then also, and I'll put a wee photo in my report, but Cadet Cromwell will be working with our Parks Department and out at the Big Fruit Playground. There's some sort of interactive art that there's a wee competition running, send your photo over here using that subway voucher. So there'll be a few photos of kids running around and looking at things and sort of interacting with different games on the ground and just with the playground. And that's all. I'm happy to move on my report. If I can get a seconder. Cheryl, you looked up first. Thank you. And then we can move on. So it's the next item is the members' report. So just go around the table. Cheryl, if you'd like to start, you just keep down there.
On the 25th, I went to we had a meeting with the Historic Precinct, and I'm very pleased that they had counters that were that had identified the increased numbers of people using the toilet facilities down there, to the point that as of the 4th of November, the toilets will now be cleaned twice a day. And they are now looking to add an extra toilet, men's and women's. It won't happen before Christmas, but it's definitely something on the cards for after Christmas. So that was very, very positive. Council meeting on the 3rd of November, we looked at the report about the smoke-free policy, and now that will include vape-free on council land. That's good. There was some interesting options put forward regarding the disinfecting of community water supplies, which we currently use liquid chlorine, and there are a few issues with that, i.e. it can't be stored for more than 3 months, it loses its strength over the warmer months, so there's issues. They're looking to phase in chlorine gas, which doesn't have as many negative properties. So, for example, it's more sustainable to the influx of temperature, easy to source, and it doesn't age as quickly as liquid chlorine. There'll be an increase of the upfront costs with that. However, the operating costs will be lower, so that's why. We had a report on the waste services review feedback, which is interesting with regard to all the bins. And we talked about council mart and decided that perhaps it should be on hold just for a moment while a few of the members look into whether what benefits there are and finding out the experience from other councils before we commit to it fully. Yeah, there is. So what else? Our Cromwell Community House on the 8th of the 11th. It's always interesting. They're really good at getting funding, and they're going to get enough money to do carpet and a few other maintenance things. Then we had another meeting of the Historic Precinct on the 18th. This was, they were very happy. They've got some new parking, some parallel parking, which they're very pleased about. They'd like some parking on the other side. This goes down on the side next to the Grain and Sea, and now they're looking to get parking on the other side, so that will be beneficial. And they've got a new sign going up, which they're just signing off at the moment, which will be like a "You are here," and showing all the different businesses around the precincts. So yeah, that's me.
Very good, thank you.
So yeah, apart from my weekly slot on the Radio Essential Monday mornings, and I did a Tuesday and Monday because it didn't work out and the meet was away, so I had my first go to Tuput. You
got Stevie's Christmas on.
I know.
Spain hates Christmas.
Yeah.
Spain hates Christmas music.
Well, especially when it's played in November. As Cheryl was reporting to council on the 3rd of November, a couple of things that come up with that. There was a forming of an unborn road out at Cambridge that the council considered. Interesting when the neighbours didn't like the fact that the unborn road through their place was going to be formed. I think was a fair way of putting it, but we went through a process and it's been done. Eyesights, we approved a non-binding expression of interest for Ranfley and Roxburgh eyesights to be tier 2 centres, and then the Arizona and Cromwell ones to be tier 1 or 2. So it's a process to go through, even though we don't operate the two Alex and Cromwell ones. The Wanga Drive Greenway Reserve That's been through the hearings panel process, recommended to the council they should adopt. And also approve the rectification of that reserve, and it did. The council did that, so it's going through the process now. It's probably going to be a resource consent scheme administered for conservation, used to the recommendation of the council, or the decision made by the council. Sorry, because the council made the decision. The council minister has to approve it. Then I expect there'll be some resource consent that Trustees will go through. Plan change 17, which was a plan change for the GIS mapping, which was a procedure that was approved. We've got a bit of an update on what's happening in the RMA world, which is scary. The key thing I think is that the early draft that was heard by the Environment Committee, so it's not a select committee, I think there's been a number of recommendations come out of that actually will make some changes.
It's a process, wasn't it? There was a select committee before it was even first readers.
Yeah, so maybe they're trying to do a better process that might be done with some other things, like Three Waters, so I say. Sure of that's good. The news report and that stuff that I can't tell you about because I have to get it. And hearing panel was on the 9th of November. None of the decisions are out yet. So one was for an outlet called Foothills Mining, which is a mine alluvial gold over McRoy Carrick Station. So it's on the true right bank of the Nevis River upstream of the crossing. So that's been worked through. The recommendation, I think, and was to approve that, but the decision's not out yet. A retrospective of consent for a property in Rockborough involving a house that has neither building or consent. It's working through a process. And we had one of our regular ones up in Queensbury for us, a 2-lot subdivision, and also a subdivision that Queensbury Ridges, which is a large landholding on the right hand side above Gladsmuir Road, with the river to the substation. Next door as well. So that's about it for me.
Yep. On the 18th of October, I attended the AGM of the Cromwell District Community Trust, and amongst
yeah, I forgot about that
one. One of the interesting things there I thought was a talk on the setting up of the Cromwell Gorge cycle trail, which was absolutely fascinating. And of course, it was an absolutely outstanding venue with Nolte House, and I was very lucky to be given a guided tour and a history of the house, which was fascinating. The 22nd of October, I attended a meeting between Council and the Central Lakes Equestrian Club, which is actually an operational meeting. And the purpose of going there was really just to see how the council works. One thing that came up from that was I spoke to the chair of the Equestrian Club yesterday. He said he's still waiting for a response on that meeting. Gareth, recall that? Sorry, not paying attention. Sorry. Yeah, the Central Lakes Equestrian Club. Remember the meeting we had there on the 22nd of October? Yeah. They said they're still waiting for a response, and really what they're looking for is council approval to go ahead. So we took that on involvement, and unfortunately we offer an approval for them to get water rights. Yeah. It might constitute what the blueprints will be at a later stage. Because there is 90 hectares area and they are proposing just to actually cover irrigation on the question side of things, it actually leaves a massive gap for any future sport fields and stuff like that. Right. So we didn't think it was good to offer that letter of support as of yet. Okay, so further investigation. So have we responded to them and told them? So Gordon's going to be responding next week because we're saying with the reserve management plan we're going to be processing. Okay. 31st of October, I attended the AGM of the Cromwell Community Squash Club, which was very interesting, and they discussed at that meeting a possibility of holding a regional tournament in conjunction with the Alexandra Club as well. On the 9th of November, I attended the Cromwell District's promotion group, which I've actually taken over as the liaison from Anna, because I think it clashed with other things. One of the things that came up at that meeting was the difficulty in obtaining council approval to hold the Christmas parade and the carol concert under COVID level 2 restrictions, but that has since been resolved, I believe, because they agreed they're going to set it up as a closed venue in Alpha Street, reserved there. The thing that struck me about that was the huge enthusiasm of the whole committee. And of course, Carolyn is the chair, and they had some really excellent ideas for future events. Something I didn't put on my report because it only happened last night was I attended a meeting at the Cromwell Golf Club. As you know, I'm vice president there, and they've decided that they're going to hold in March of this coming year a Central Otago Masters tournament, which is going to be for golfers over the age of 5, male and female, and it's going to be held jointly with the Alexandra Club. And the idea is that the male golfers will play Cromwell one day and Alex the next day, and switch around the following day. And that's going to be in March, and it's only going to be for senior and very accomplished golfers. So it's going to be a prestigious tournament. And that's it. Thank you.
Hello. Late October, I attended 3 days, consecutive days of workshops on Three Waters. The first meeting workshop was in Ranfurly, second was in Omakawa, and the third was in Alexandra. And in Ranfurly, it was looking at the problems associated with sourcing drinking water for Ranfurly and Naseby and Patiaroa, and some quite difficult problems looming there about sourced water and quality of water and treatment of it. In Omakawa it was the same with water, but also wastewater. Again, some difficult problems, and by difficult you can take it expensive. All the options that have been looked at involved big capital expenditures, and it was the same in Alexandra. So it was an interesting workshop that had representatives from Tahu, from the regional council, and various other irrigators and other stakeholders. So it was an interesting 3 days, and a bit daunting really in terms of the potential capital expenditure in that area, in the Three Waters area. On November the 3rd, attended the council meeting, which Cheryl and Neil have touched on. I would maybe just talk about the Waste Services review. There was a survey done with really very strong, from memory, 700 or 800 responses, which is to the various options for future bin services through the district. So it was a well-presented survey, and it obviously excited a lot of interest. And it, from 2023, when all the contracts and waste services fall in, will be proposed. The survey was looking at frequency of bin collection and also the provision of green waste collection and or food waste collection. So it's quite exciting times in that area, and although it's still a couple of years away, there are going to be some big changes, and I think potentially an increase in the level of service and on what is being collected. The third thing was attended a meeting of the Memorial Hall Subcommittee last week, which was to receive presentations from shortlisted responses to the RFP, and that was an interesting process. Maybe going back to the council I'd also mention that as a council, we published a letter which I think was last week, which was a letter to the minister, and it really and signed by every councillor, and it was outlining council's position on Three Waters, and that was subsequent to the government mandating Three Waters. And I don't know if people have read it, but it was, I thought, a well-worded and quite strongly worded statement about what council's view of what is happening in the Three Waters space is about. And probably it'd be fair to note that as part of that, what's being reported is there's a fair amount of unhappiness within within councils through New Zealand about the performance of local government New Zealand, which is our lobby group in Wellington, for which we pay a subscription, and how well they have performed and are performing. So that the whole mandating has still got some legs to run, I believe, and I think we're fortunate that Tim didn't mention it in his report, but he's everyone will know that he's a member of the working group set up to look at the governance structure of the proposed new Three Waters entity. And all I can say is we're lucky to have Tim there, and good luck. And finally, and I stand to be corrected, but talking to Stephen Jeffrey at council, is talking about the new cycleway from Clyde to Cromwell, and they've got a counter at Carrick. And Stephen's memory was in the 6 months from May to November, or roughly that period, which is the required period, that counter registered 40,000 clicks on the trail, which I would have thought, even allowing that some of them were just local rides, that's a phenomenal number of people during a COVID lockdown during the off season. And I know, certainly living at Bannockburn, it's very obvious that the pressure points for parking and the traffic movement around the Bannockburn Bridge on both sides, I suspect around at the inlet and Cornish Point, and somebody mentioned before, even back in Cromwell, there's parking pressure. So that cycleway is an unqualified success, I would think, and if 40,000 in that period, once things are back to normal, who knows? That's me. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All we need to do is receive that report. We have a mover. Oh, yes, seconder, Neil. Thank you.
Actually missed two pieces on mine.
Yeah, go on.
Three counting. I did speak at the Cromwell Rotary last night on Three Waters, and most importantly, I did think Five Stags had the best blue cod in Central Australia, but I think the town of Townsville does that. And it was raised there, that the hospice shop at least closed in the north. And I just walked past and said hello to people in the florist, and she's shutting at the end of the week, so that's a complaint. Yeah, really significant business.
That one over in where Watson used to be.
Not that one there, but that one over there.
Yeah, not the lake, no, where Watson used to be.
Yeah, where Watson used to be. Yeah. That's not entirely good news for businesses within the week. I don't think they're be closing with them. Rotary felt their house auction on Friday at 4 o'clock. Unfortunately, huge testimony to the Cromwell community. Yeah. Way that's Cromwell Rotary and Doreen in particular, but the way the community's come together has been incredible. I think it was built at the same time that my renovations at Alcoa.
Thank you. Next item, 21.9.11, it's just the governance reports, status reports. I'll just give you all a chance to stroll through and find notes. Any questions or comments? Yeah. Yes.
Just harping on back to, sorry, the Cromwell Bike Park toilets. Now, just to clarify, I mean, the toilets for the historical precinct were done by a counter, which was organised by council. So, but this says that, in this status report, it says that the bike park committee are to undertake a usage study of the toilet facilities at site overall. So why is the council not actually doing that?
Yes, we've got the county information.
You have for the Cromwell Bike Park?
Yeah. So I don't know why they would take on another study because we've got all the information. We've also looked at doing some basic costs on getting the pants, so the toilet seats, so the one exchange the female, the one female. That would have to be addressed if they're not planning to increase the budgets. Does that make sense?
Yeah, where did you, are you talking about the bike park? Where did you?
The Cromwell toilets, you're talking about the historical.
No, not the historical ones, no, this is the Cromwell Bike Park. You know, I mean, it's on just off Knee Plus Ultra Street. You know,
Oh, yeah.
You know, the, what do they call it?
So I don't think it's put on count.
It's behind the squash club.
Yeah, I think they put on count now, the information.
Where do they put on the counters and how do they monitor it?
It's just through the doorway, so as they go through.
But there's no door.
There's no doorway.
There's no doorway there.
It's the toilet.
No toilet.
Very low down.
There's no toilets there. This is what they're after. And so I was wondering how is it going to be monitored? Or how do you count the people when there's no toilet there?
So then we'll get Debbie in answer to you guys. I think she's been running it. I'm not sure she's doing a feasibility on that. I thought they were just going to get some count information.
That was what was talked about at the last community board meeting. And then I sort of thought about it after this, and I was wondering how you're going to get counted.
All the Cromwell toilets that they've got the counters on. Maybe they should be.
That's different. See, that's way at the other end. That's at the historic precinct.
Right.
This is at the other end of town.
What page are we on?
127. Came out, remember when they submitted it, the long-term plan, that they were asking for toilets at the Cromwell Bike Park.
Right.
I remember that. And it's down here as being on hold, and I asked at the last community board meeting, and it was suggested that there would be counters put on, but I was wondering how.
I think it might have been, that's why I'm a little confused. I thought there was, anyway, so what I'll do is I'll get some information, I'll get it back.
Okay, thank you.
And then I think they had, last year they had a portal there, were they going to count, we'll use that?
I was wondering how you're going to count.
I don't know, there's one there now, is there?
No,
Nothing, that's why I was wondering how you're going to count, what, you know, there's nothing. People visiting the site.
Perhaps that wording is more appropriate, is it? On hold.
Yeah.
I think the key difference is that with old Cromwell was that.
Yeah, you can count that, that's easy,
Yeah,
because you've seen the increased number going across the threshold. So that was obvious, but in this situation, you did for a park.
Yeah, but I'm thinking maybe that then someone's thought they could count how many use their portal and how many people go there, because we don't know how many people used it.
No.
So,
Yeah,
or did you work it out?
if somebody could get back to us on
Yeah,
that.
absolutely.
Thank you.
That's a good question. The management plan, has there been any contact with that? The reserve management plan? This is the Bentley camp.
I'm not involved.
I was just wondering if they've been contacted. I'm assuming that they haven't been put in contact because they are difficult to get hold of. But I was wondering. The report says that it's in progress, but I'm just wondering. That's not more persuading, but.
Well, and Robert
It's
says
easy,
it
it's
was
easy.
I mean, it's like, it's so.
Right. I would make contact with them.
Yeah.
Anyone else? Yeah. Gareth, with the town centre project, just up front in this is, council approved the recommendations and the advisory group's been set up. But how do you see the process of moving from there?
So we haven't set up our first meeting yet.
Okay.
So we're just getting some information from Neil Penny, which is the NMA architect. We'll set up our first meeting and start structuring it.
I'll just look at it. And then was there anything the staff could tell us about how the process has been going for the Memorial Board? Any updates? I know Nigel gave us a bit of an update.
We've awarded the contract.
Right.
So JASMAC won the tender. And the JASMAC's team comprises of Jess Sunderland from CCCT. It's sitting on that team.
Wow.
So we've got a really broad spectrum and a local representative sitting on that team. So we're pretty stoked with that. Their presentation really was.
Yeah.
They did exceptionally well. There were two objects that presented, and the one that didn't make it through actually did a really good job as well. But Jazz next really delivered. So we're really excited to get into that project, and we're just working with Jazz at the moment to see how we're going to either manipulate the external stakeholder group issue. If she's going to remain representative of that, just because she's on the architect's team, or whether she needs to get another member of the CCT to join that group. So we're looking to get in the background and yeah, happily advertise it. It's really exciting. Really keen to get the things sort of good.
You're looking pretty stoked. So
Yeah.
good presentation. Awesome.
Yeah, I'd endorse what Gareth said. There were two very good presentations, and one of the things that stood out with JASMAC was the emphasis on the local, touching base and being local and listening to local.
Perfect. Yes. It's been an important theme all the way through, really, isn't it? So, really good. Thank you.
I just mentioned through the chair that point about somebody else from that group being added to the committee, if you like. And I think we actually mentioned that one of the community board meetings, might have been the last one or the one before, but there was always the possibility of co-opting an additional member on from each of those groups anyway. So I don't think that would be a problem, would it? Do that.
But just to clarify, that rep was nominated by the group, we direct it, so if you're going to lose one, then that group should tell you who the replacement's going to be. Yep. So there's no need
Or if they need
to at all.
Or if they need it.
That's what I mean, if they need, what I do with that. And if the group feels that it's missing some sort of expertise from another group, then that group can decide to go and ask for another person to join it. But absolutely, it's not as though that any group gets more involved.
I think that's what we agreed on.
Anything else? Nothing else. All we need to do is receive the report. We're going to have Neil.
Okay.
Sure. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you very much. And then lastly for the public meeting, it's just the date of the next meeting, which is 15th of February 2022. It's a bit of a break. I know it's been a pretty big year for everyone, so the staff, thank you very much for all the support you've done for this year. So yeah, that's the last one. We're going to do it. We just have to resolve next, right? And then so the next thing we can do is just resolve to end the public session and go into a public excluded session. Are you happy to do that?
Yes.
In favour? Carried. That concludes our public part.